National, High Violet.
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here. Thanks for watching. Internet's busiest music nerd doing an album review, The National's High Violet. The National is a Brooklyn band. They've been together for about 10 years now, and they've just put out their 5th album. And The National has a distinctly cool and reserved rock sound. And what's awesome about this album is that it was recorded in my home state of Connecticut in the same studio where they recorded Turn on the Bright Lights by Interpol. But that's enough fanboyism. If you're going to expect anything of this LP, if you're going to expect anything of High Violet, make sure you're ready for some white collar blues, filtered through a very bleak, mournful post-punk sound. This is the kind of self-perpetuating sadness that occurs when you're making $80,000 a year, but yet you still believe that something's just still not right about your life as you look down on the busy city streets from your high-rise New York studio apartment. So if that's something you have difficulty relating to, the sentiments of High Violet might not exactly resonate in your heart of hearts. But for the most part, I'm half joking. There is something arguably relatable about the melancholy sounds of this album and the National's music in general, whether it's the good production, the great songwriting, or Matt Berninger's baritone vocals. There's a lot to like, and I'm seriously a sucker for baritone vocals.
Just not really a fan of the thin, whiny, pansy vocals.
Not a fan.
And though High Violet is a sad LP, there are a lot of aspects to it that make it a really easy pill to swallow. And I think the strongest of those aspects is the production. The horns, the strings, there's even a point where I think I hear oboe. Just a lot of color, a lot of texture throughout this whole LP. And I think the best addition to this album is most definitely the mechanical, meticulous drumming style. Usually I like my drums a little more dynamic, a little more interactive, maybe with a little more variation, but I wouldn't have it any other way on this album, because if the drums weren't so sharp and just right on tempo, this album would seriously sound like a bowl of somber mush. And now that I've touched down on that point, there are actually some parts of this LP that do sound like that. Just a bowl of somber mush. So much gray area that you'll just be begging for some black and white to just make things a little more lively. Tracks that are so weighted down in misery and instrumentation that I think they actually try to sonically drown themselves out in some kind of music-related suicide attempt. The tracks that I actually found myself loving to death weren't the simplest or more straightforward tracks, but the ones where you could actually hear a decent separation between each of the instruments. I'm thinking Conversation 16, I'm thinking Blood Buzz Ohio, Anyone's Ghost, Sorrow. These are really beautiful, well-crafted songs with an extreme attention to detail, like Eleanor Rigby. Take a note out, it's ruined. There really is a strong assembly of very cinematic tracks on this album that when I hear them, even though I'm not digging every single song on High Violet, it really makes me think, damn, The National is completely deserving of every shred of fame that they receive. High Violet for me does have its share of great moments, but there is this handful of tracks that are just keeping me from falling in love with this album. And I don't know if that's the general consensus, because a majority of the reviews that I'm seeing for this thing are just fiercely positive. This thing most definitely has some nice sound, some decent songs to spare, and a lot of attention to detail. But I think its biggest downfall is maybe its consistency, because if you step back from this album, even just a few feet, everything tends to get very, very blurry, as if this thing is almost too cohesive for its own good, because after just experiencing this ongoing sad, somber emotion in one sitting, kind of makes it difficult for me to just muster up the strength and the attention span to listen to even the last 2 tracks, which arguably have some of the best production on the entire album. Though I did enjoy this LP for the most part, just too many songs fell into the gray area for me. And if you feel the same way, maybe because of the stronger tracks on the album, like Blood Buzz, Ohio, it's kind of worth it to stick around and maybe acclimate yourself to those weaker or less immediate tracks. I'm feeling a strong 6 on this album, but what do you guys think? I know this thing is getting a ton of good reviews, and are you one of the people who thinks this album is amazing? And if so, tell me why down there in the comment box. And also, how do you think this album compares to their earlier work? Anthony Fantano, The National, High Violet, forever.